Hi everyone, Father Scott Vanderveer here with another installment in our book that we're reading as a parish called Rebuilt Faith. And today we're talking about the practice of faith. And I think a good starting point for that is just the most basic definition of that term, practice. Like soccer practice, repeating an activity over and over again for the purpose of mastery. We do soccer drills so that we can become really good on a cellular level in our muscles. We'll have the memory of how to do an action in a way that gets the result that we intend. So when we think of practice in that way, we're thinking of the repeated action of believing in God in a kind of disciplined, repetitive kind of way, trusting in God in a way that shows that it's a part of our life. We're weaving it in. Just as our kids go to soccer practice maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 6, so we keep holy the Sabbath day by following the third commandment and worshiping God. We practice our faith by repeatedly worshiping, repeatedly serving, repeatedly sacrificing, by having a routine of prayer, by having a way of going about our life that reflects a practice, a repetitive way of managing the activities and tasks of being a disciple. But I think practice also has a bit of a further context as well. When we think about something that is so big, that has so many components to it, that we can't exactly call it a subject or an area, we call it a practice. That's how we talk about medicine. Doctors have a medical practice, not because they don't know how to do it yet, but because there's so much to know. It's kind of like saying that something is a mystery, that doctors are investigators of medical mystery. A mystery doesn't mean that it can't be understood. It means it can be endlessly understood. And that is what I think we're looking at with faith. It's kind of like the practice of medicine, the practice of law. It's not something we ever are able to fully master because it's bigger than we are. There's always more than we could ever fully know or understand about law, about medicine, and about some other things as well. Faith is a practice in the way that doctors have a medical practice. We're always plumbing the depths. We're always going to deeper areas of understanding and wisdom, but we will never exhaust all that there is to know. We will never worship God in a way that gives true homage, true, full, what's the word, right? That even when you see me looking for the word, it's because it's unfulfillable here on earth. We will never fulfill the glory of God by our worship. We'll always be aiming at it. We'll always be looking at how to aim higher, to have an increased capacity for love and trust and belief in God. Igor Stravinsky was the famous composer who created so many violin concertos. And there's a story that one time a violinist who was one of the best in the world was angry at Stravinsky and said, "I'm so angry that you've created music that's impossible to play. It's so hard. I can't play it right. And it makes me angry because it feels like it's beyond human ability." And Stravinsky said, "I know it's very hard, but I don't wish to hear someone play it perfectly. I wish to enjoy the sound of someone trying to play it." That's maybe a glimpse of what faith means to God. We can never fully master all that is involved in faith, but it gives God joy. It brings God glory to see us attempt. It's kind of like, as one ancient church father wrote, we can never exhaust a mountain spring by drinking its water. No human can drink enough spring water from a mountain geyser to exhaust the spring. But just as we don't get discouraged because we can't drain the spring dry by drinking it, nor should we be upset that we can't know everything about God that there is to know this side of heaven. The joy is from trying to always know more, of moving toward our potential. Well, that's so true in faith. Just as the violinist is always yearning, trying to play Stravinsky's piece more perfectly, as the hiker is trying to gulp more of the mountain spring, so the believer is trying to worship God a bit better than ever before, to believe in God a bit more deeply, to trust in God a bit more resolutely. That's what faith looks like, feels like, sounds like. It's a approach toward life that allows us to think about faith as something that is a becoming, something we're always moving deeper into, not something that we ever arrive at or master. I was talking with a professional musician once about music, and I was talking about how difficult I find the math of music, what they call music theory. When you learn about how all of the notations in music are meant to be played or sung. I just find, for example, like an organ, where there's a top register of keys and then a bottom register of keys and then keys, pedals on the floor that you play with your feet. And I think, how are you supposed to do one thing with this hand and another thing with this hand and a third thing with your feet while keeping a rhythm, while creating something beautiful with dynamics of quiet and loud and tempos that speed up and slow down? And in talking to this professional musician, he said to me, music is so multifaceted and so complex, you'll notice that although it's mathematical, it's never called music law. It's called music theory. Isn't that interesting? When you take a class on the mathematics of music, it's called music theory, not music law, because it can't be mastered. Even if it were called music law, let's remember that law itself is so complex that we call it a practice. See how it all goes back to that? What is it that we're being called to do in the practice of our faith? Well, in the first place, it feels like we're being called to show up the way we want our kids to show up to soccer practice. We cannot possibly be ready for the big game if we're not practicing. Don't you love that image? Of course we have to practice. Someone who's not practicing or training for a marathon is never going to be able to complete 26 miles. How would they do it? We must practice for what lies ahead. We're practicing our faith so that we have what we need for the challenges of life. Faith is a practice, and the first way that we practice faith is we show up for it. We don't miss Mass. We don't fail to pray in the morning or at night. We make commitments based on what we believe. We serve others as is commanded in the scriptures. In that way, we're showing up. We're practicing for the big tournament, for the game that we'll have. We don't go to soccer practice because it's going to be all giggles and fun. We go because we have to do the drills that are going to help us in the big game. We go to practice in a very serious way when we're late in the season and we've got a shot in the tournament. The practice of faith starts with showing up and being committed. And then in time, we'll realize, wow, this is like getting an understanding of medicine. I'll never master all this. There'll always be more to know. In a way, That means our faith is more of a theory than a law. Our faith is going deeper and deeper and deeper into truths that cannot be fully mastered, fully computed by our human hardware. We lack the hardware to run the programs that God would love us to run. But just as Stravinsky said, it brings God glory just to hear the sound of us trying. Practicing our faith, one of the essential parts of rebuilding our faith, as we hear from these authors. What a great topic for our small group and for our own personal reflection. May you practice your faith in the fullest sense of that, in the commitment that you show to it, in the time that you spend, and in the willingness to go deeper to realms and dimensions beyond our wildest dreams, and farther than we'll ever be able to master this side of heaven. But let us go together with faith and hope and love. Peace be with you all.